So where do we begin with Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgovic last night? It was a really exciting fight. I personally thought it was going to be a stinker, but I'm glad that I was wrong. So Daniel Dubois, he did well to overcome some adversity last night. And I did say that in my pre-fight prediction that he has shown that he can overcome adversity. So everyone has Dubois down as a quitter, but I think he's learned something from those fights with Usyk, from that fight with Joe Joyce, and also the fight with Jarrell Miller, where he did have to kind of get through a tough period and he ended up knocking him out in the 12th round. So fair play to Daniel Dubois. There are still some glaring flaws though, honestly, and I am not sure how he's going to fare against AJ if he fights him at Wembley. So let's just talk about the fight. So in the first and second round and the third round, Filip Hrgovic was just spamming, literally just throwing right hands with no respect for Daniel Dubois. Just throwing that right hand. He was landing it sometimes. Sometimes Daniel Dubois was ducking his head, showing a bit of head movement, but more often than not, he was landing. And it was really frustrating to watch Daniel Dubois just standing in front of him, not doing anything. So we heard his corner telling him in between rounds to get his double jab going. And when he did throw his jab, even if it was a single jab, whether it was a double jab, he was landing it on Hrgovic and he was actually getting into range to land a big right hand. But it was extremely frustrating to just watch him doing nothing, just standing in front of Hrgovic, bouncing up and down and getting laced with a right hand that was so predictable. So it was good to see Daniel Dubois switch it up, take advice from his corner and go through the gears. That's what we want to see. We want to see a fighter able to adapt. So he started to land on Hrgovic and we started to see what I've suspected about Hrgovic all along. Hrgovic has no gas tank. He shrunk when Daniel Dubois started to put pressure on him and when he got cut. And understandably, when you get cut, it does change things. But we started to see him shrink. His mentality changed. He wasn't as aggressive. He wasn't throwing his shots like he was earlier in the fight. So it confirms for me a lot about Hrgovic. Now, obviously, you can't write him off based off just this performance. He can come back. He's not that old. I think he's 30 years old. But I saw in the Zhang fight, he looked like he wanted to quit at least twice when Zhang was hitting him with some hard shots. He looks lazy to me. He looks like he's naturally talented. He's able to put punches together. He's got a decent array of punches, but he looks very lazy. And I'm talking inside the ring, he looks lazy. And probably outside the ring, he hasn't put in effort to improve himself because he has the physical characteristics to be a very good heavyweight, but it looks like he hasn't developed those characteristics. His gas tank is really poor. You could see him getting gassed after a few rounds. There was no kind of guile in his work. He literally was just throwing the right hand. He was catching Dubois, but that was more because Dubois was just really poor in those first few rounds. He was catching him, no feints, wasn't really setting up anything. It was just throw the right hand over and over until Dubois made the adjustments and he started getting caught. So I am not impressed by Hrgovic, to be honest. His attitude just seems all wrong. He's been a lot of promise, a lot of hype, but for me, he's never delivered. And in his last few fights, he just hasn't looked very good. So I don't know where Hrgovic goes from here unless he has a serious attitude adjustment, which Daniel Dubois gave him yesterday. Now, as for Dubois, so he did well. Like I said, he overcome adversity. He looked like he was going to stop Hrgovic in 1 or 2 rounds anyway before the fight got stopped for the cuts. There might have been some headbutts in there as well, which may have led to the cut. I haven't watched it back, so I don't know. But he showed that he has some bottle. He has some courage. He started to put Hrgovic under pressure, started to put his shots together, started to land a hook, was landing the big right hand. It was really impressive to see that from Daniel Dubois, and I'm happy that he got the win ultimately. It was a good victory for him. But now, if we're talking about AJ at Wembley, I think it's going to be a really hard night for Daniel Dubois. So defensively, Daniel Dubois still has a lot. He leaves a lot to be desired. He stands straight in front of his man. He's getting caught with simple right hands that he should be seeing from a mile away. When he does use his jab, he looks a lot better. He would have to be quite active against AJ because AJ is a low output fighter. He's not a high output fighter. He since his loss to Ruiz, he's become very kind of cautious. You can see him with Ben Davison. He's trying to be a pick-em fighter where he will throw certain shots. He's not going to throw a big volume of shots. He's just trying to throw certain shots at the right time. So I think if you've got somebody like Dubois who's very active in front of him, it's going to cause AJ problems. Now, is that Daniel Dubois? I don't know. Daniel Dubois is susceptible to AJ's jab. He's susceptible to pretty much every shot that AJ has going. I think it will be a difficult fight for Daniel Dubois unless he really comes in with the mindset that he's going to push AJ back and make it a dogfight like he was in the last few rounds against Hrgovic. He's got to make it a dogfight. He's got to make AJ feel uncomfortable because AJ wants to be completely comfortable in the ring. For me, he's not ready for all of that rough and tough stuff. He doesn't like it. He wants to stay at the range. He wants to stay and start to pick you off with shots like a good right hand, and he can throw a decent left hook. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to mix it, AJ. So unless Dubois goes in there and he's aggressive and his gas tank is on point, I don't see him winning that fight. Now, whether he can do that, me personally, I don't think he can. I could be wrong. I don't think he can beat AJ. I think AJ is just going to stay cautious, stay on the outside, beat him up with a jab, and eventually start to bring the right hand into play. Obviously, AJ has power, and he can hurt somebody with that power. But I would like to be proved wrong. If Daniel Dubois looks at the tape from yesterday and analyzes what he did wrong, maybe we'll see an even more improved Daniel Dubois, because he is improving. With every fight, he is improving. But there are still some glaring flaws. So let's see what he can do. If that fight gets happen, I'll be happy about that. I'll definitely watch that. What do you guys think? Let me know.